Welcome to the inaugural broadcast of the Debra Rufini Show on the ArtistFirst radio network. All past shows are archived. You can find them at ArtistFirst.com. And now here she is, your host. It's Debra Rufini.
Hello everyone, my name is Debra Rufini. This is my first show, which I'm very happy to be hosting, and happy to have my very first guest, who is Jackie Hunt, the resource manager of street pastors in Portsmouth here in the UK. Welcome, Jackie. It's good to have you with us.
Thank you.
Tell us a bit about street pastors, who you are and what you do.
Okay, well, Street Pastors was initially set up by Reverend Les Isaacs in London in 2003. He's a minister at a church in Lambeth and was aware of the rising gun violence in Lambeth. Okay. And he'd been out to the Caribbean and he'd seen the difference the church was making. The Caribbean at the time had very high rates of gun violence, and several ministers were going out onto the streets in the evening, and it was making a difference. Sure. So that inspired Les to come back here and set up Street Pastors. So the first night in Lambeth and Hackney, 18 street pastors went out and made a difference. They went out there caring, listening and helping. Later in the week, the police contacted Les and said, whatever you did, it was great. There were fewer calls for the police, it worked. So now Street Pastors, we're in about over 280 towns and cities in the UK. And there's a couple of places in the States, Australia, Africa. It's a growing movement. And basically Street Pastors we are interdenominational, we're Christians, and we're all volunteers, we're trained volunteers, and that's a really important part of it. Sure. Every street pastor, to be a street pastor you have to be over 18, you have to be a Christian with a reference from your minister to say you've been a Christian for at least a year. That's important. And you have to have a clear DBS, disclosure and barring. Mm. And then you undergo training. The training is quite comprehensive. You get trained by the police, who are our partners, the local authorities, paramedics, mental health professionals, so that the training really equips you to deal with lots of scenarios you're going to encounter on the streets.
Oh, great. Yes. You know, I've heard, I didn't know that was founded by Les Isaacs. I remember in the 80s buying a book of his at the Keswick Convention called Dreadlocks.
Oh, yeah.
And it was, a very inspiring book. Because he had quite an interesting life, hadn't he? So
very interesting, and he's inspirational. In fact, he's coming down here in July.
Oh, is he really?
To commission our newest street school prayer and response pastors. So he's very active. He runs now. He's a CEO of Ascension Trust, which is our umbrella organisation, and he's very active in keeping in contact with every street pastor initiative in the country and making sure he's there for the commissioning of the new street pastors. Because he is so inspirational, it's a great time for us to invite people along and inspire people to join street pastors.
Yeah, that's great. Oh wow, what a witness. That's
yeah,
good.
Yeah.
And that's nice to, I was watching a few YouTube clips over this last week, and I was very touched that you're doing this, going out on the streets and sort of, in a sense, clearing up after people, you know, they're a bit worse for wear,
absolutely,
being sick and falling over.
Yeah, I mean, I was out with my team Friday night, and we'd only been on the streets minutes, and we were handing out flip-flops to some young woman who had taken off her very high heels, you know, there was glass around, so we gave her some flip-flops. I've been out before when people have been sick, and we carry hairbands with us to tie their hair up away from the sick, wet wipes to help clean up the sick, and just a bottle of water to freshen them up a bit. So it's just, you know, we're just a caring, non-judgmental presence on the street, and I think people really respect that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and that's nice that you are Christians, but you're not taking. There's nothing wrong with taking the gospel to the streets, but it's quite often when people think about Christians, they think, "Oh, here we go. You're going to hand us Bibles or New Testaments, or you know." But
that's very much the case. When we first hit the streets in Portsmouth, I know the police, even though we were set up by the superintendent at the time, the police were very wary of a load of Christians going onto the streets, but they're very aware that we're not out there evangelising, although we are evangelising by the very fact we're not, you know, we're doing God's work. We're not actually out preaching, but we are, actually the actions speak louder than the words sometimes, but we're actually out there doing God's work, and and I think people do appreciate that and respect it.
Sure. And that's more attractive to get people to come to see the kindness behind it, explore the kindness and why you're doing this, and there must be something in these people's lives to make them want to do it and to help, and maybe explore the God of kindness rather than the God of wrath.
I think so. I mean, somebody came to my church and talked about street pastors, and straight away I thought, fantastic, this is a way I can practically use my faith. It's something that, rather than going to church, or I obviously still go to church, but not only going to church, I can practically do something. Yes. And I would say probably most of our street pastors are here because of that. They want to do something practical with their faith.
Yes.
And you do get down and dirty. We encounter some horrible situations. We often are called upon to be witnesses in if there's a horrible incident, the police are involved. We do see the darkest, seediest sides of the city.
Yes, I'm sure.
But you before we go out, we always pray, and we pray for our city, and we also pray that God will direct us to the places we really need to be.
Yeah.
And you have this great sense when you're out with the team that God is right there directing you to where you need to be every time I'm out on the streets. That's overwhelmingly the feeling I get. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you're sent out are you saved in numbers, sent out in groups?
Yeah. So once you're trained as a street pastor, we put you into a team, and you stay in that team, and your teams become rather like a family. People are very close. Teams, you get to know your team.
Yeah.
Each team also has prayer pastors, or most teams have prayer pastors. Right. So Tracy is a prayer pastor for a team that goes out.
Okay.
Yeah. We were out Saturday night.
Oh, are you? Yes.
So we stay, as a prayer pastor, my husband and I stay here. And we meet up with them before they go out, and then they go out and we stay here and pray, and we've got the phone, so if there's any incidents out there, then they can ring us and we can start praying directly at the same time as they're actually dealing with that incident.
Oh, wow, that's pretty. So we also have Tracy with us, who's a prayer partner.
Yeah, and admin.
So it's It's a good first interview for me. I'm enjoying this. It's very good. If you feel you can discuss it, have you ever had anything very nasty that's happened?
I think in the 5 or 6 years I've been a street pastor, I can think of a couple of times when we've seen real aggression.
Oh, have you?
I mean, we do see aggression most of the time, but this was these people, and it ended up being a racist incident. And my team were around the train station when it happened. Yeah. And we were then asked to be witnesses. The police called us to be witnesses because we'd spoken to the perpetrators before, and they had told us they were out to harm somebody, and then we actually witnessed it. So it was really horrid to see. And actually, we spent a lot of time with the taxi driver who'd been attacked and had to call an ambulance. So you do see the worst, but really, on the whole, you just meet people who want to give us a hug. We meet a lot of service personnel. Obviously in Portsmouth we've got lots of young men and women who are come back from the ships or submarines, and they haven't seen family, girlfriends, mums, and they've gone out for a really good time, got completely plastered, feeling a bit sick, and then suddenly a bit sad and lonely, and they want a hug. And often people will say, I really miss my girlfriend or my mum, can I have a hug? So
a hug goes a long way.
A hug goes a long way, yeah.
Volumes, doesn't it?
On our training, we're told, hugging. If you really have to hug, keep it female, male, male, which we really try and do. Oh yeah. And we're also told to hug from the side, so it's a side hug. But sometimes people just really want a big bear hug. And like you say, a hug does it means a lot.
Yeah, because on average, you don't get people who don't know each other hugging, do you? Unless it's an introduction to so-and-so, my friend. So that's that's very touching.
Yeah.
Very touching.
And of course, loads of students. So Freshers Week, there's, we've got 27,000 students in Portsmouth, and 4,500 student rooms are in and around where all the nightclubs are. So the first Freshers Week, you'll have students, it's their first time away from home, their first experience of nightclubbing possibly, big drinking, and they really don't know how much they can drink, and they often, obviously we're picking up people who are very sick, and but also people crying because they've been away, first time away from home, missing family, so it can, it's great. We are a trusted presence.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and quite often people, it's nice that you're doing this caring work, and the police can sort of put people's backs up, can't just the police alone. So it's good that there's a presence that's very caring and not wanting anything back as well, because most people are. I think it's natural for us to think, what are people getting out of this? Why, you know,
we get asked that a lot. People say, so hold on, let me get this right. You're a volunteer. You're out at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you're cleaning up sick. Why? What are you getting out of it? Why are you doing it? And we say, no, honestly, this is where we want to be. It's what we want to do. And every time we're out, we meet amazing people like you, because it's so true. I wouldn't do it. You know, when you train as a street pastor, we always say, can you give us 2 years? Well, most of our street pastors have been with us 6, 7, 8 years, because you do meet amazing people and you get amazing feedback the whole time. And, you know, it enriches yourself as an individual and your faith. And everything. It's amazing. Yeah. It's amazing ministry.
That's wonderful. Do you ever get... Because I've thought about it in the past myself, because it does seem, you know, when it first came... So sorry, when did this...
So in Portsmouth 2007, we set up in Portsmouth. Okay. We were the first city in the south of England to have street pastors. So we've been here 11 years now. We continue to... we continue... No, it doesn't. It's gone really quickly, really. Yeah. We continue to put out 10 teams every month. So most of our teams are 4 or 5 people. So that's every Friday night, every Saturday night in the city centre, and then payday weekend in Southsea. We'd love to get more teams out because they're needed all over the place, but it's just recruiting volunteers, because of course we recruit from churches, and the church population possibly isn't growing as big as we need it. So, you know, I'll go to a church and do a talk, and people will say, well, I've been a street pastor, or I've been a trustee, or been involved somewhere along the line. So we always look for new recruits.
Oh wow, okay,
yes. I'll print all the application.
Mother would be happy.
Yeah.
47, but Mother still wouldn't be happy.
No, well, my parents are fairly elderly, and they say, we don't like you going out onto the streets of Portsmouth. And I say, honestly, Mum and Dad, I'll get hugged to death more than anything. People just want to hug you.
Yes, of course, And I guess it's interesting, isn't it? Because sometimes we can be quick to judge. So I'm not saying street pastors are, but I think in society we can be quite quick to judge. Oh, for goodness sake, look at the state of them, and their own worst enemy. But quite often there's reasons why people drink or get into that state, or use drugs, or there's always, you know, we all came into the world as a baby, but life circumstances happen to us, and there's always a story.
Yeah,
but quite often there's a story behind.
Yeah. Well, we find that with the rough sleepers we encounter. There's quite a lot of rough sleepers in Portsmouth. And,
yes.
You know, we will stop and talk to them, and we've got emergency blankets we can hand out to them, and just chat really. But most of the stories are the same. They've been kicked out of the family home. They've come to Portsmouth because there's another family member here. That family member then doesn't want them, and they can't afford to get off the island. And they're here.
Right.
They're here. Yeah. It seems to be a familiar story, doesn't it? And there's often drugs or drink involved as well, but nearly every single rough sleeper you speak to, there's a family breakdown. There's no family support.
Really?
There's no love. There's no love. So there's people on the streets who haven't got anyone who loves them enough to take them in. And I was just telling Tracy, Friday night my team came across one of our regular rough sleepers who'd been poorly in hospital. He'd been discharged on the Thursday back onto the streets because there's no in-between support service for him. He has an outreach worker from our local housing support charity, and he doesn't want to be in a hostel because he had bad experiences as a child with men, so he doesn't want to be there.
It's understandable, isn't it?
It's understandable, but we prayed when we got back to our base. We prayed for the poor NHS staff who had to deliver him back onto the streets. I mean, what an awful job to do. To know that he can't stay in hospital because he was physically well enough to go home, and his home was a sleeping bag outside of a department store in Southsea.
Oh my goodness, how awful.
But amazingly, Friday night, he was crying and he was in pain, and we did actually end up calling an ambulance for him again. Yeah. He asked us to pray for him. So my team, we knelt down and held on to him and prayed, and he cried his eyes out, and it was terribly emotional. It really was, because, you know, it's all, you know, it seems so simple, but it was a big thing for him, and he thanked. Then our Saturday night team came across him, and he thanked the Saturday night team for the prayers that he'd received on the Friday. So
wow, that's great.
It's very powerful. It's very powerful sometimes, you know. And you know, we've said this before. When you pray before you go out. We pray when we come back for our coffee mid-time. We pray at the end of the evening for the people we've come across, and all that prayer going on in the city. It really does make a difference.
Yes, yeah, I'm sure. Do you ever get any feedback from someone that you've helped? Do you ever have any sort of like letters coming.
Yes, in fact, I've got a couple on my desk actually. One from a woman who said, emailed to say, look, I'm not a Christian, but thank you so much for making sure my daughter got home safely and everything you did, and what can I do to help? So I emailed her back and said, look, you can like us on Facebook, you can get us to come and talk to one of your groups or a society you belong to. You can donate, you can do a fundraiser for us, you can become a street pastor, you can go to church, lots of things, lots of options. And we had a couple of letters recently from young women who we've helped because they or their friends were very much very intoxicated and couldn't cope on their own. Our street pastors made sure they got home safely. And that's so rewarding to get those letters because most of the people you help you don't hear from, and we wouldn't expect to, but when you do get some feedback, it's great.
And maybe if someone's been very drunk, is there a possibility they may not have remembered what's happened to them?
Possibly. We try and give out one of our street pastor business cards to people. Because there's a Just Giving, they can donate if they want to donate £1, they can, or they can like us on Facebook. That and all those things make a difference.
Yeah, and that spreads the word as well, doesn't it?
Yes.
So it may be a matter of time before this would be great to spread to other parts of the world, maybe America. Or,
there are street pastors are in Maine, I think, in the States, and somewhere else. There's two initiatives over there. They're in Yarra in Melbourne, Australia, and somewhere else. So there are in pockets around the world, and I believe Nigeria, Africa, and India has been approaching the Ascension Trust to try and get it started there. So there are pockets of it around the world. It would be fantastic. It really would. But we're just so lucky in our country to have it in, like I say, over 280 towns and cities.
Wow, that's very good, isn't it? Yeah,
so in the south, we've got it in Southampton, Portsmouth, Winchester, Andover, Basingstoke, Alton, Chandlersford, Fair Oak, Eastleigh, and they're different, addressing different needs. So whilst here in Portsmouth, our street pastors are out between 10 o'clock and 3:30, 4 in the morning, in Chandlersford, they're there sort of between 7 and 11 when the trains come back from London and people are going to the pubs.
Right. Yes.
So, there's different needs that they're addressing. Still out there in the nighttime economy, it's called. Yeah. Talking to people and caring, listening and helping.
That's great. No, that's what people... I think you're brave just on the account alone of listening to the music these days that comes out from the clubs.
Yes, yeah. And we've got some very good clubs here, actually. But unfortunately, our 80s club did close down.
Oh, did it?
Yeah,
No.
So,
so I would have been up for doing that if the 80s club was if I could do that patch.
Yeah. See, I've got daughters in their 20s, so most of the music I'm familiar with and I know, so, there's a bit of toe tapping that does go on there. Yeah.
You're down with the kids.
I'd hate to think that.
Oh. So do you get many people on hold that speak about the Christian faith, and hopefully there's not too many that mock what is they sort of explore, because on average it's kind of like, it's all about God's judgment and the whole thing. It doesn't like gays, doesn't like transgender, doesn't like this negative.
I think
about
certainly at the beginning there used to be people who used to say, here come the God Squad, or here come the Bible Bashers.
Oh, that's upsetting.
But my team, and I think most teams, just say, yeah, fine. I'm quite happy to be on the God Squad. I really don't mind being on the God Squad or Bible Basher. But now people know that's not what we're there for. There's less of that. But occasionally you do get, especially if someone's been drinking, engaged in a conversation about does God exist or whatever. Again, part of our training, they recommend that we don't get involved in conversations.
Oh, does it? Okay, yeah.
Like that, because actually, if someone's been drinking a lot and they're telling you God doesn't exist, you're not going to change their mind.
Yes,
you're
true.
really not. And if they're being argumentative, and you can see people getting themselves quite worked up about it. I personally, I come from an atheist family, and so I always say to people, do you know, the world would be so boring if we were all the same.
Yes, it would.
That's fine. I'm not asking you to believe in God. All I'm saying is that God loves you and I love you, and I will put those flip-flops on your feet to stop them getting cut.
That's right.
Or, and people, I think, increasingly know that.
Yeah, that's good, and I like that, because that has more effect than, and no disrespect to them, but quite often street preachers. I heard some street preacher the other day in, I think it was Commercial Road, and everyone was walking past and shouting things at him, and I thought I'll just have a little stop and listen to what he's actually saying. I sat on the bench, and a lot of it was a bit chauvinistic.
Yeah.
But all about the judgment. It wasn't so much about the love; it was about the judgment of God. And
yes.
And I thought then, thank God for street pastors that have a completely different, still Christian,
yes,
but have a completely different approach
yes,
to non-believers.
yeah.
We don't view you as going to hell. Let God be the judge of your heart, and He understands why you felt the need to drink or take drugs or something.
And Street Pastors is a non-judgmental initiative. That's what we're there for. So we've got gay clubs, we've got a transgender club in Portsmouth, and we always make a point of going around there, talking to people. And again, there's a lot of love between the street pastors and the people we meet there.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that goes a long way. And even if it doesn't, sometimes it can be in hindsight that these things mean something to someone, and they remember an act of love and the Christian testimony. Quite often, you hear. I remember this occasion that a street pastor did this for me, or something. So that's kind of nice. It's very rewarding. I guess.
And a few of our street pastors have become street pastors because they said, the street pastors really helped my daughter or my son. And in fact, my daughters who go clubbing in Southampton, they say we love it when we see the street pastors out because you feel safe because there's that presence is out there. So I think it's lovely that young people know that street pastors are there to make the place safer.
Yeah, that's great. No, that's absolutely brilliant. There was a guy, I don't know if you're familiar with him, who had his, I think it might have even made national news. He had his whole possession set on fire.
Oh, yes.
His bedding, and I think there was some money there, and just everything was just gone by two lasses that were, I think they'd had too much to drink the night before, and it happened very early in the morning. But he was touched by, you might have met him actually, but a church that kind of took over and replaced his mattress. It may not be anything to do, it was everything that just went up in flames. And again, it was church organisation that kind of replaced his things, and he was very moved, and hopefully it will bring people into the church as well to discover more about the motive behind the love.
Yes, we'll do. I mean, also our initiative, we also have school pastors. So again, these are trained Christian volunteers who go into schools. So we've got 8 trained school pastors now, and 5 of them go into a school twice a week. They go at lunchtime, and again, they're just a caring, non-judgmental presence. And the idea is they fill the gap between the teaching staff and the lunchtime supervisors, and build up relationships with the children, so that if the children want to talk to them, they can. And that's going well. We've got another school who'd like school pastors in, so we're hoping to build on that. We've got a new school pastor coordinator starting with us fairly soon, so that's another area of growth. And again, it's the same thing. People, I think, at the beginning thought, Christians coming into school, what do they want to do? But actually, when they realise, we're just there to be a listening ear, a kind, listening, non-judgmental ear, it's worked. I think people can see that children are building up trust.
Yeah.
And the other part of our initiative, which last year we trained 12 of our street pastors to be response pastors. And response pastors are street pastors who've had additional training.
Right.
And at Grenfell Tower and Manchester Arena bombings and Westminster Bridge, Southwark Bridge, response pastors went up there, and the response pastors don't go beyond the police cordon, but they're there to help the emergency services. And already the police and the emergency services love response pastors because it eases the burden on them.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
At Manchester Arena, the response pastors that were there just sat and listened to people who had maybe witnessed things that were upsetting, and they just talked and talked and talked. The response pastors sat and listened. So we've got 12 of our street pastors and response pastors. So they will get called upon to deploy. If there's an incident in London tomorrow, they may get called upon to deploy to that if they can. Again, it's voluntary work.
Yeah, and that's great as well. But you're not getting paid for it. It's more, you're doing it off your own back. You're giving up your time.
Yes,
and that's brilliant. You mentioned Jackie about going into schools. I remember. I think it's the first year of comprehensive, like the Gideons coming in and giving you. It was lovely, very sweet.
Yes.
And then you'd see that other kids would be using it as roll up pages, and it was I think then it was very much the God Squad coming in to lecture to us, and so it's a very different. That was great. That was a good thing, but it's nice that there's God's love without have this New Testament. Have this, if you don't have this, but it's here if you
absolutely
would like it.
We do sometimes if people are really distressed and they don't know what to do, and we've talked to them, and we might say, would you like a prayer? But only if you sense that it's the appropriate thing to do. We wouldn't straight away suggest that. And usually the teams are sensitive enough to pick up on the fact that this person might be receptive to prayer.
Yes.
And people often say, look, I don't know. I think I would, but I've never been prayed for. I've never been to church. And for the majority of the time, when the street pastors do pray for them, it's a very positive experience. I can't think of any times when someone's not been happy with a prayer.
Oh, really? Oh, that's interesting.
Because you have to be sensitive in how you offer it. You know, I wouldn't go straight up to somebody and say, "Do you want me to pray?" And I wouldn't pray in tongues. You know, I would just sensitively suggest after we talked about other things. Would that be something you might find helpful? Yeah. And people, it does touch people being prayed for. Yeah. Well, as we know as Christians, how powerful it is. But I think if you've not come across it before, it's a surprise.
And even if they don't necessarily believe, it's just that the gesture is nice in itself, isn't it? Yeah. That it's kind of wild. Yeah. A bit like Nicky Cruz with David Wilkerson showing such love.
Oh yes, yeah.
And then of course he went far.
Yeah.
Is it true? I've heard that quite often people like rough sleepers, like you mentioned earlier, that they can't go back to families naturally or situations where they may be abused. Sometimes they don't go back to the hostel that they could have come from because there's lots of drink and drugs and they're trying to wean themselves off, and to go into that environment again
it's
can be
different.
quite dangerous.
I mean, it's different. There's so many different homeless charities, but the main ones in Portsmouth, you can't take drinks and drugs there.
Sure. Yes.
So the homeless people that are accommodated there will get support from an outreach worker. They'll get support from somebody there to help them with their drugs or alcohol or whatever problems, help them get back into work. In fact, the two biggest homeless charities in Portsmouth are trying to actually generate money to rehome people, to actually buy properties and put people in a permanent home rather than just sticking plasters, actually dealing with the problem.
Yes.
I mean, obviously we know a lot of the people we meet when we're out on the streets aren't homeless, they're begging.
It's a job to tell, isn't it?
It is difficult to tell. It's difficult to tell, and that's where you have to be non-judgmental and just love everyone and listen to what they have to say. But some people are definitely just there to beg. But hey, I wouldn't want to be on the streets begging. Do you know, Christmas Eve in the freezing cold, whatever.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's very hard, isn't it? Because even like walking through North End, you'd be skint if you gave to every every beggar or homeless person. But it's kind of, but yes, and sometimes you offer to buy a drink or not alcoholic drink, something from Greggs or McDonald's, and it's on there. That's fine, thank you. But they would still want money. I never know what to do in that situation. You kind of. I don't want to pay for your.
No, I know absolutely. No. We never hand out money. We give the rough sleepers one of our business cards, and on the back of that is all the churches and places. I mean, pretty much every day in Portsmouth you can get a hot meal if you're a rough sleeper, and we've got those on the back of our cards.
Oh, that's good.
And also homestay services who will support you. Portsmouth Wellbeing Service. So we give those out. Most of them know because the outreach workers go out, and also over winter there was a winter bed scheme, so 6 or 8 churches opened up and for a week at a time and manned the church, and people were referred to the church from homestay services and it gave them a bed for the night, so got them off the streets into a church, a warm church. So that's been really good, and I think they're going to extend that next year. So more churches in a longer time.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Just getting. I mean, street pastors. We're not here to deal with people, the rough sleepers on the streets. We are our sort of remit, if you like, is the nighttime economy. But of course, the rough sleepers are very much part of that.
Yes,
because they're often out in the areas where there's crowds at night time.
Yeah, and it's good. I guess it's good to sort of keep an eye on them as well, because from what I understand that sometimes they can be. You get sometimes hear of a few people beaten up just because there's nowhere safe. To go, is there? If they're just going to be there with a sleeping bag, and
I know.
So it's good that you can. They must feel safe that you're keeping an eye on them as
well as much as we can. I mean, this chap my team met on Friday, who had been discharged from hospital. He'd been discharged with medication, and that had been stolen from him by the rough sleepers.
My goodness.
So he was, he was in a lose-lose situation. No home, nowhere to keep his medication safe. So.
Oh my goodness. we take everything for granted, don't we? I mean,
it's very easy to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And it seems a shame that every time, because I live not too far from Kingston Prison, which is all shut up now. But I think, if only you could home so many people in that prison. I don't know what's going to become of that, but it's so many people could. But I saw YouTube is addictive. I've got to stop. Yeah. Recommended for you. And you read it up. It's 4 a.m. before you actually go to sleep. I read somewhere that there's 15 homeless people in Portsmouth. That seems quite small. Is that?
No. Well, we were the street pastors were part of the Rough Sleeper Count. So the Rough Sleeper Count happens one night in November, everywhere across the country, and every city has 50 or more volunteers who go out to specific areas and count the rough sleepers. You can only count someone as a rough sleeper if they've bedded down or if they're standing within 2 foot of sleeping bag. Even if I met one of our regular rough sleepers and he was walking around, I couldn't count him because he didn't fit in. So it's just a way to get a figure. So our rough sleeper count in November was 42
in
Portsmouth.
Really?
So and we know that's way under.
Wow.
For example, there's tents over by the supermarket by St Agatha's.
Yes, I noticed that.
And because we couldn't see the people, so we could say there were tents there, but and we did try and wake them up, but it doesn't seem terribly fair 2 o'clock in the morning to wake people up. But we couldn't count them. So the rough sleeper count was 42 in November.
Well, when I read 15, I thought that seems very, very small.
Yeah.
Because even just in a town alone, there's
Commercial Road on its own, you probably have about 15.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah.
So it possibly could have been that, so I don't know.
Yeah. And there's also, is there an organisation by Family Church, I don't know if they work with street pastors, where they go out and feed, give food? Is that the food? No, it's not the food bank.
No, it's not the food bank. No, actually pretty much, masses, most of the churches in Portsmouth do something distributing food. So St Simon's has Sunday night suppers, St Jude's has Friday night fridge, so the rough sleepers can go along, get a bacon butty and a cup of tea. Family Church go out and take a hot meal out one night. So, like I say, nearly every night of the week you can get a hot meal in Portsmouth if you're.
That's very good, isn't it?
If you're homeless.
Yeah. What hits me sometimes is you get the atheists who say, "Look at all the awful people that have been Christians and all the awful acts that have been done in the name of Christianity." But many of these charities, like something, they're in Christian name, aren't they?
Yeah.
The Christian works. You don't get many humanist or atheist, not so many, I would guess, charities or things like this that is outreach.
Yeah. Possibly not. Yeah, I don't know. There's certainly a couple of individuals who come into our city and serve hot food from the back of their car, and they don't do it with a Christian perspective, do they? I don't know if they're Christian or not, but. No, it's about having a heart for your community, isn't it? Having a care for your community.
Yeah. No, I think that's really good. It's I used to work for the so the Samaritans are part of the Samaritans are part of this, and but it's having emotional and physical support.
Yes,
isn't it?
Absolutely.
Something like this.
Yeah. And of course, with all the cuts to services, the alcohol and drugs support services have gone. There's what's on the back of our card is all that's there now. We used to have lots more listed there, and they've all been cut and gone. Mental health support services, as you know, they're cut. So
yes, they are. Yeah,
we've got one of our a regular rough sleeper who gets sectioned occasionally and is released from St James's on a Friday morning. Friday night, he's back on the streets. He has a stoma. He's diabetic.
Oh, my goodness.
And he's got mental health problems. But there's no support service in between.
Dear, oh dear.
I keep talking about our regular rough sleepers. We don't have a huge amount of contact with them, but because we are out when they are often out on the streets begging as well. Yes. We do obviously come and build relationships with them over the years.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good. Oh,
in fact, yesterday I was contacting one of our local councillors who knew this rough sleeper we met Friday night, and he's trying to get him and housing services together to get him off the streets because this guy really needs somewhere safe.
Yeah, it's about safety, isn't it?
It's
not just about bed on the streets. I'm just looking at the back of this card. There was used to be a place Was it near the prison? Mill House? Is that? That's
Yeah,
all gone now?
no, that's there.
Is
That's
it?
Home
It's
Estate
called something
Services, yeah, it's called something else.
Oh, okay.
it's
Home Estate Services.
Home Estate Services there, and it's the Society of St James and the Salvation Army run those two buildings now.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And that's where Home Estate Services is.
That's brilliant. And it's good that there's the recovery hub, there's a drug and alcohol support, a needle exchange as well.
Yes, yeah.
Because there's been a few things.
Yeah.
Facebook is like Marmite, isn't it? For
Yes,
lots of people who love it or hate
yeah.
it. But there's been a few images of sort of needles, and I saw some needles on the ground.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, we all our teams carry a sharps box with them. But if I'm out with my team, I would, and there were several needles. I get the teams, because we all wear quite hefty boots.
Oh, good.
Put your foot on the sharp end and contact Safe Space and get a paramedic to come and pick it up, or get the police to come and pick it up, rather than get our volunteers to pick it up.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, because it's very, very scary, isn't it? It's sort of like children sort of running around.
Yeah,
and just,
absolutely.
You never used to see that around, but I guess it's more. No, I think you're very brave.
Well,
Very
that's
brave
what
to do
my
that.
elderly parents say. Well, you're so brave. I say, no, it's not about being brave. Honestly, I feel a fraud when people say you're brave, because actually you go out and there's such goodwill towards street pastors, and we have such great conversations with young people. And every time I'm out, we end up saying to young people, "You lot are amazing. You look after your friends. You look after it's a very positive experience, and it's not about being brave. It's just about loving your city and loving your community and going out and sharing that love, really.
Yeah. And it's the whole thing, what would Jesus do?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, people often say, why do you do this? And we always say, look, if Jesus was here, he would be a street pastor.
Yes.
He'd be cleaning up the sick, he'd be putting flip-flops on your feet. This is what he'd be doing.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. I think it's a great example of Christ's love in action.
Yeah, it is. It's
good.
exactly what it is, yeah.
And it's nice to hopefully bring some people into the church.
Yeah.
Just to see what it's all about.
Yeah, it would be great. It would be great. I mean, certainly we've prayed for people before when they've asked for it, who aren't churchgoers, and when we've got back to base, we've prayed and we've just said, Father, maybe one day he'll walk past a church and think, oh, somebody prayed for me, and it made me cry, and go in.
Yes.
Yeah, and see what it's about.
Yeah, and that's good, because I think a lot of people, it's not just that they. I've just my own experience of knowing of certain situations where people have been damaged by people in the name of a loving Heavenly Father.
Yes.
And that can sort of, we've all got our own walk with God, but it's sometimes it can be that influence that's made the person think, oh, if Christians are like that, none of us can be perfect, but sometimes it can change our mind.
Yes.
So think, oh, hang on, but I've seen another one who's also born again. But has been completely different, and it's now attractive again. Because it's people can always lose their faith and be pulled away from the church because of Christians, and that's so important that there's an organisation without a catch. We're showing the love of God. I always say to people, it sounds so simple. We're here to make the streets safer and kinder, and we do that by offering reassurance, safety, and support. That's it. There's no catch. That's it. It's simple, but it works. Yeah. The police know it works. I mean, the police come along to the beginning of our patrols just to let us know what they're expecting the evening to be. Because actually, the police say, street pastors, we love you, because now you're here. We don't have to sit for 2 hours with this girl who's being sick. Great. We can get on and do policing, and you can sit with that person, and we know you're DBS checked and trained. Yes. And we're happy to leave you with this person. The emergency services, the same. Street pastors in 2009 in Portsmouth, we set up Safe Space, and that was literally a safe space where people, if we found them collapsed on the floor with an excess of alcohol, we could take them there to sleep off their excesses. That's now run by paramedics, and it's great. So it means Friday and Saturday night, if we find people, we can either radio through to Safe Space to get them to come out, the paramedics to come out, or we can go there and get a wheelchair. But there's somewhere safe in Clubland that we can leave people. And they're triaged there, and if they need to go to hospital, they'll be taken up to hospital. It just takes the burden off the ambulances and the A&E, and it means people often they just do need somewhere safe to sleep off the excess alcohol or drugs. Yeah, that must be a massive relief for the police and paramedics. I think it is. They can leave them and also the City Council. We have financial support from Portsmouth City Council, which is fantastic, and I think they recognise the value for money that street pastors bring. Not only do we do that, we pick up
bottles. I think I've worked out we've picked up over 25,000 bottles since we've been on the streets.
Oh my goodness, that's quite a few.
Each bottle is a potential weapon. Crack a bottle and you've got a weapon. So it's making the streets safer in that way as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good that it's important that you've got protection.
Well, part of the training as well of a street pastor is you're taught how to recognise violence and when it might be escalated. Recognise the initial when someone's starting to get angry. Recognise when to step out of that situation, because what you do not want to do is put yourself in danger at any point.
Absolutely.
So all of our teams know if they're with someone who's starting to bristle and move his head about, then just step back. Don't. We're not there to be superheroes. We're absolutely not. We're just there. But often standing back and saying to somebody, is everything okay for you?
Yes.
And they might start swearing and you can sort of ask a few questions and people generally calm down a bit.
Oh, that's good. That's good. They come.
One of the things we do is we carry lollipops. So, for example, at the beer festival last year, my team, within half an hour, we'd met a group of about 8 men in their 30s. So these are older than usually we're meeting people who are in their early 20s. And they'd been thrown out because they'd danced on a table, which you're not allowed to do at a beer festival. And they were really angry because they said, look, we're in our 30s, we shouldn't be treated like this. And there'd been a bit of a punch up and there was blood. And we started chatting to them and we said, how do you feel about that then? And they were saying, we're really angry. And we're saying, yeah, you sound really angry.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then what happened? And we got them to talk. And as they were talking, they were calming down. And after a few minutes, we said, about 10 minutes, we said, do you want a lollipop? And they went, oh, yes, please. And so they had this sort of group of little boys. And then they wanted to hug us and they invited us to go clubbing with us. It was really great. It's just that being heard. Sometimes when you're angry and you've been drinking, just to be heard is worth a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you don't expect to be offered to have a lollipop, do you?
No.
And that's not patronising. It's just a lovely thing. And that's the sort of thing that would be shared on Facebook because it's I don't understand the kindness of this person.
Yeah. Well, lots of students who've been at different cities will say, hey, you lot, have you got lollipops with you? The street pastors in Swindon hand out lollipops. And we say, actually, yes, we do. And the street pastors in Winchester hand out hot chocolate, which we don't do. But
are they specific about their flavours?
I don't think so. But they haven't got 27,000 students to deal with. So
oh, yeah.
We wouldn't be able to do that.
Oh, any lollipop would do. Yeah. Oh, that's great. So how long have you personally been doing this, Jackie?
I've been the resource manager here for 2 years, but I've been a street pastor for 5.5 years.
Okay,
now.
Yeah. Oh,
so it's just the two of us. We just, Tracy and I, run the office between us. As I say, we've got a new school pastor coordinator starting in a few weeks who will run the school pastors, and we just keep the rotas going. And every street pastor team that goes out carries a dictaphone, so every encounter we record. Right. So we might say, just had a conversation with 2 white females aged between 18 and 25. We gave one flip-flops, the other one was very appreciative. They ended up asking us for a prayer. All that will be recorded. And then we have our statistics at the end of each year. We can look to see how many pairs of flip-flops we handed out, how many meaningful conversations we had, how many vulnerable people we helped, how many potentially aggressive situations we calmed down, how many alcohol and drugs related incidents we had. So we've got really good statistics. We pass those on to the police each week, and they love our statistics because we actually do record everything. So it's quite a good picture of what goes on. But also we can use those statistics then for when we apply for funding. The Mothers Union asked us if we wanted lots of flip-flops. They donated lots of flip-flops to us. So it's having the statistics enables us to ask people for things and be given things. So
sure. And it's also safety for yourself if there's any accusation.
Absolutely.
Actually, I've got it on tape. Got a CCTV.
We do. And so every street pastor then gets sent a copy of the weekend's report, so they can pray for people who are out there or see what's gone on. We send them the sanitised copy. We keep copies with names on, locked up and secure, just in case, like you say, we need to refer back to it 2 years' time, whatever, 2 years ago.
Yeah, of course. No, that's vital so that you've got it there. What happens sort of like if someone needs to get home in a taxi, do you fund the...
No, we don't. We're not allowed to hand out money. I think I can think of several times when I've been out. On the usual scenario, you meet a young woman. She's gone out with a crowd of friends. They all move around clubs. She's lost her friends. Her phone has no is dead. We carry a battery. We carry a phone charger with us now, but her phone, maybe she's lost her phone, and she's too drunk to get in a taxi. So the taxis won't take anybody who's really drunk in case they're sick.
Yes, of course, yeah.
So what do? One instance we're on radio contact with CCTV, so we can ask CCTV if they will pick this woman up. We'll tell the woman where to walk where there's CCTV cameras, if we can.
Yes.
And this particular incident, we knew this woman lived in Cosham, and we know from the city centre to Cosham there are CCTV cameras all the way. So we asked CCTV, just can you pick this woman up and we'll get her to walk along those roads. So she was able to get home. We've walked students, we can walk them back to their halls of residence. We had a young woman who lived out of town, couldn't get back, didn't have enough money, and we found some money. I shouldn't be saying this because we're not allowed to pay for it, but we pretended, look, we've just found some money.
Yes.
So we'll pay for the taxi, and we negotiated a cheaper rate with a taxi driver. So there was no other option because we can't take people home in our cars.
Oh, of course,
Don't
risk that, do you?
And we can't be seen as people who just are a cheap way to get home. So,
yes.
So whenever we can, we'll walk people home, or usually, nearly every weekend this happens, 3 o'clock in the morning, you're phoning someone's mum and dad.
Oh, really?
I know, and I always say to my daughters, do not get the street pastors to phone me at 3 o'clock in the morning because I'm not coming out. Yeah. But, if that's the last resort. And people say that my mum and dad will come and pick me up. I've lost all my friends. They've all gone home without me.
Oh.
So, it's usually good old mum and dad who get called at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, yeah, I bet. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
No. But all those good old mum and dads out there, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's really good. It's been very informative, just talking about this, and it's, as much research as I've done, it's nice to speak, to someone who's like fully involved and doing this. I think it's very applaudable. I think it's great, and thank you so much for taking your time.
Thank you. It's been
Jackie
a pleasure.
and Tracy.
Yes.
And I wish you all the best for however long you're going to do it.
So many more years. Yeah.
So many more years. That's brilliant. As long as God will use you.
Yes. I should just mention we have got 2 street pastors in their 80s.
Have you really?
Most of our street pastors are, I would say, 55 plus.
Yeah.
It's a difficult thing to do when you've got young children, but actually, when you've got a bit of time, when you're older, it's doable.
Yeah, that's great. Oh well. All the best for that. And you can can you have sort of breaks and then come back to it if you wanted to?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being with us today, and wishing you all the best for God's work.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
God bless you. Thank you. That was lovely speaking with Jackie and Tracy there. I've always been in awe of what street pastors do, and it must be a very daunting thing to go out onto the streets and not knowing what you're going to be faced with, who you're going to be confronted with, the reactions of people, even though they're fully aware that there's prayer partners praying for them and that God is in control of the situation. But even so, it's still the uncertainty of knowing what you'll be faced with. And in speaking with Jackie and Tracy, it reminded me of many years ago when I read Les Isaac's book called Dreadlocks, and speaking about his former days as a Rastafarian involved in violence, and then he came to this turnaround point and realised the need for Christ in his life, and it's just amazing that someone who's living such a destructive life can find the Lord and become a completely new creation, and becoming a founder of street pastors. And it just brings hope that there may be people today who are living lives that are not healthy, and they come to a breaking point, as happens to many of us, and they will also go on to be founders of massive organisations such as street pastors that will bless others and have a domino effect. And it kind of reminds me of this story of, or certainly the conversion of Nicky Cruz, where he meets this as he calls him, a skinny little preacher, David Wilkerson. And, thinking of the film The Cross and the Switchblade that I saw many, many years ago, where, you've got this man who's, I think he travels far away from his home. He leaves his pregnant wife because he feels the calling of the Lord to do so. And, you wouldn't do that by choice. But nevertheless, he felt the need to go and reach out and find such people as Nicky and the Mau Mau, who were on a searching for something, but not really knowing which direction they should take, and feeling an emptiness inside. And I think I remember in one of the scenes in the film where David's sleeping in his car, and he gives these shoes to a gang member, and the gang member is, as discussed with Jackie and Tracy, that just the very act of giving someone your shoes, with leaving yourself in just your socks or bare feet, is it's quite something. It's very touching, and it's making someone feel worthy. And why would someone do this off their own back? What do you want from me in order to to do something like that? And it's not often we see giving without receiving, and that's just such a great thing. And it just leaves hope for people who don't feel they're worthy, to know that there is a God who loves them and believes in them and thinks they're great. And there's that saying, isn't there, that God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. And when we look in Scripture, that there's many examples of Jesus calling people who were far from living righteous lives. And it's just a reminder, really, that it's not about, who we are and what we've achieved. But irrespective of that, God can call anyone for the use of his glory. And I think that's really great. And so anyway, I'd like to thank you for listening and giving me the opportunity to give this show. And I wish you all a very pleasant day. Lots of love, and God bless you. Bye-bye.